The lesson for today, Bismillah, is Inna wa akhawatuha. Inna wa akhawatuha. Last week we did Kana wa akhawatuha. And for the sister in the room, on this time, I'm not sure where you're at, where you're located, but for me it's Tuesday morning in Kuwait, and in the States it's Monday night. On Monday nights we go over An-Nahw al-Wadih, a book on Arabic grammar. We just try to cover one small principle. It's not meant to be very heavy on us. It's just meant to give us a foundation in Arabic grammar, so that when we're reading throughout the rest of the week, when we're doing the hadith and the books, the Islamic books, when we see these principles, we can understand them better by studying them a little bit. So anyway, last week we did Kana and its sisters, Kana wa akhawatuha. And the sisters that were presented, and there are others according to different people. You have Sara, Asbaha, Amsa, Adha, Dhalla, and Bata. All of these right here have to do with, or all of these rather, all of these have to do with how you spend your time, or at the time of the day, like that. Kana comes with the meaning of placing something in the past tense. You have a timeline. Here's now. Here's the past. Here's the future. When we say Kana, then we talk from there on out. Alright? Takes us to the past. Sara. Sara means something changed from one thing to another. Sara means, for instance, Sara Abdullah Sheikhan, meaning Abdullah became a sheikh, meaning he wasn't a sheikh and he became a sheikh. Sara Zubair Hafidhan. Zubair became a Hafid. He wasn't a Hafid and he became a Hafid. Then it says Asbaha, which means to welcome or to come into the morning time. Amsa, which is to come into the evening time. And we find these words in our dua. Asbahtu wa amsaytu. Adha, which is to come into the duha time. Dhalla means to spend the day. And Bata means to spend the night. All of these, including Sara and Kana, can be in the past, the present, and the future. The Madi, the Mudari, and the Amr. They could be the past, present, and they could be command. As Allah says, Kun, be. Right? Kun, be. Right? Yumsi'u, yusbihu, yudhi'u, yubitu, yudhillu. All of these can be made into present, into past, into commands. Except Laysa is the only one who is only in the Madi. You'll never find it in the future, in the command or in the present tense. And out of our categories, is it an ism, is it a fi'l, or is it a harf? These are fi'ls. All of these are fi'ls. Kana wa akhwatuha are fi'ls. And they are verbs. And they enter on a mubtada and a khabar. So we have our basic two sentences. Ismiya fi'liya. Right? And fi'liya. Okay. Ismiya, Jumlatul Ismiya consists of, we're just talking right now, basic two words, both of them nouns. Mubtada and al-khabar. Right? A noun, our subject and its predicate. Subject, the beginning word, and the information about that word. Fi'liya begins with a fi'l, a verb, and a fa'il. The doer of the verb. And sometimes put that maf'ulun bih, the object of the verb. But we're not really dealing with the Jumlatul Fi'liya now. We're dealing with the Jumlatul Ismiya. Last week we learned that if I put kana or any of its sisters first off, in the Jumlatul Ismiya, the Mubtada is marfu' and the Khabar is marfu'. We learned, however, that when we have kana in front of a Jumlatul Ismiya, that the Mubtada stays marfu' and the Khabar becomes mansoob. Simple. But that this name changes, becomes Ismu Kana, and this is where it gets a little more difficult, and Khabaru Kana. You understand that, Abdullah?
So far.
It's really pretty easy when you realize the Jumlatul Ismiya is made up of a Mubtada and a Khabar, and that they're marfu'. When you put kana or any of its sisters in front of a Jumlatul Ismiya that has a Mubtada and a Khabar, like this, then the Mubtada is going to stay marfu' and the Khabar is going to become mansoob. Right? So for instance, we say, if you have any questions, sisters, I don't know where you're at or what your level is. If you have anything, you can just type it, inshallah ta'ala. Okay, she studied this. Okay, so we have, for instance, here, let's say, let's say, let's use the word we had before. We use Zubair Run Hafidun. Zubairun Hafidun. Zubair is a Hafiz. Now if I put Kana Zubairun Hafidan, كان زبير حافظا. Zubair stayed marfu', but Hafiz became mansub. Or if I said Sara Zubairu Hafizan, Zubair became a Hafiz. Or if I say, for instance, he woke up a Hafiz, Asbaha Zubairu Hafizan. Or he woke up and he only had a few lines to memorize, so we say Amsa Zubairu Hafizan, because he went to bed a Hafiz. He went to the nighttime a Hafiz. He wasn't when he woke up, but he went. So Kana Zubairu Hafizan. Same thing if it was present tense. If we said Sofa, which we said means in the future, or puts us talking about the future, Sofa yakunu Zubairu Hafizan. Zubair will become a Hafiz, or Zubair is going to become a Hafiz. Same thing if it is in the present tense. And same thing if I were to tell Zubair or tell you, kun, which is the command, hafizan, be a hafiz. Now where is the mubtada, or where is the ismu kana here? It's implied, because we can only command you. We can't command him because he's not here. So we can't tell him what to do and he's not here. So it's implied, kun anta hafizan. You be a hafiz. Become a hafiz. Right? Sur hafizan. Become a hafiz. Right? So that's kana wa akhawatuha in the simple form, inshallah. You understand, Abdullah?
Thus far.
Okay. Now we have inna wa akhawatuha. Again, inna comes before, and akhawatuha, they come before nouns. They come before the mubtada and the khabar. But they have an opposite effect. So we have al-mubtada wal-khabar, they're marfu'. Then we have kana wa akhawatuha. We have ismu kana and khabaru kana. The ismu kana, which was formerly the mubtada, is now marfu', still marfu', and the khabaru kana, which was previous just called al-khabar, is now mansub. Now when it comes to inna wa akhawatuha, entering on a mubtada and a khabar, the ismu kana becomes ismu inna, or ismu sara, or ismu asbaha, or ismu whatever. Same thing with ismu inna. It comes ismu la'alla, ismu lakinna, whatever the sisters are, it becomes ismu that, right? And this becomes khabaru inna. Oh, that's great. except in kana wa akhawatuha, the ism kana is marfu', while the khabar is mansub. The opposite happens, the opposite change happens with ism, whereas the ism inna becomes mansub and the khabaru inna remains marfu' as it was when it was just a khabar. So this change is the opposite change. But we already know that, Abdullah, from when we're reading, we say, Inna Allaha wal malaikata, like this, right? We already know that. We read all the time inna something and it's mansub afterwards, right? Inna Rasulallahi, like this. So inna wa akhawatuha. Here are the akhawat. Inna, anna, ka'anna, lakinna, layta, and la'alla. As we said, they come before the mubtada. They come before the mubtada and the khabar. Right? Just like we have here. Right? They're not coming, inna is not coming before a verb. Right? And even if kana comes before a verb, then it's not going to have any effect. If we have kana, for instance, kana yaqulu, kana doesn't have an effect on the verb. It has we're not going to say asbaha, even if they do come before a verb, right? Asbaha yaqulu mathalan, he woke up saying, or amsa yaqulu, he went to the evening saying. Even if they come before a verb, they're not going to have an effect on that verb. We learned from the majzumat or from the mansubat, for instance, yaqulu, right? We learned an, lan, idhin, wa kay. These are the ones that are going to have an effect on the verb, making it yakula, an yakula, lan yakula, idhan yakula, kay yakula. The same thing for madzum. These are not the things that are making something madzum right now. What's making something right now, what's changing, these kana wa akhawatuha, they're changing the mubtada and the khabar. They're not changing verbs. Same thing with inna. They're changing the mubtada and the khabar. They're not changing verbs. And I don't think that from my limited knowledge right now, I don't think inna wa akhawatuha even come before verbs. But maybe. But they're not going to have an effect on the verb. If they do, they're only going to have an effect on the mubtada and the khabar. Maybe la'allaha, no, even la'allaha yakulu, la'allahu yakulu. I don't think that they're going to come directly before a verb without a pronoun. That's just in my mind. I'm not thinking good right now. But even if they do come before a verb, they're not going to have a change on them. They're only going to have a change on the noun that they're in front of. You got that, Abdullah?
No.
Huh? You understand this thing that I wrote here in blue and black and red? That the mubtada and the khabar is marfu'. But when you put kana in front of it, then the mubtada stays marfu', but the khabar becomes mansub and their names change. And now inna, the mubtada becomes mansub, but the khabar remains marfu'.
No.
And the names change. That's the only thing that we're learning. It's really not that difficult of a concept. It's just something that needs to be repeated. Now, as we said with kana is making something in the past. Sara is to become. Laysa, only one we didn't explain was laysa, which laysa is a negation, right? So, for instance, where was our paper at? If we said laysa Zubairu hafidhan, he's not a hafiz. We had kana Zubairu hafidhan. He was a hafiz. He used to be a hafiz. If he forgot, for example, or if he was dead and we talked, if Zubair was a dead person and we talked about him, kana Zubairu hafidhan, he was a hafiz. Or we say kana Zubairu hafidhan mundu sigarihi. He was a hafiz since his youth, since his time when he was in the middle school, whatever, right? Or Sara Zubairu hafidhan. Zubair became a hafiz. Or Laysa Zubairu hafidhan. He is not a hafiz. So that was the meaning of all of these. Kana puts it in the past. Sara is affecting a change from one thing to another. Asbaha, to come into the morning. Amsa, into the evening. Adha, into duha time. Dhalla, to spend the day. Bata, to spend the night. Laysa, a negation. All of them, as we said, are fails. It's just memorization, word memorization. Then we have inna wa akhawatuha. Inna, anna, ka'anna, lakinna, layta, la'alla. And of course, some people might add some to these 6. Right? But generally, these are the 6 are the most common 6. So we have inna, which means like verily, right? Anna is the same thing. It's tawkeed bi thubut al-khabar lil-mubtada. So for instance, if we say inna, but inna is going to become directly before the mubtada and the khabar. Anna is probably going to come after a verb, right? After a verb or before a verb, after a verb. After a verb. Anna. Ka'anna, then this shows tashbih, which is similarity or likeness between the mubtada and the khabar. For instance, and we'll get some examples. We'll get there. We got them on the other page, inshallah. Lakinna is an exception. Lakinna is an exception, and it's seeking to prevent the listener. It says here, من سامع من فهم غير مقصود. So it's preventing the listener from understanding something which wasn't intended. So we say, for instance, and we'll have examples. Inshallah, they're coming. It's easier. Lakinna, it's an exception, like but, right? Not illa, like la ilaha illallah. There's nothing worthy of worship except Allah, where that's an exception too, except Allah. No, this is lakinna. We're preventing you from understanding something wrong from what was said. Layta is a tamanna, which means like to wish something. And la'alla is hope that something happens. The difference between a tamanna and a raja, or wishfully and hopefully, wishfully is something that is probably not going to happen. Not impossible, but not likely. Whereas la'alla and hopeful is something that is more likely to happen. That is something that's likely to take place, easier to take place. So later, man, I wish I could, be a millionaire tomorrow. That's later, right? La'alla, I wish I hope I can, I hope I can, memorize a page today. That's something that's more likely, Later, I, I become a hafiz this year. La'alla, I become a hafiz in 5 years, right? Later, I wish I could become a hafiz this year. That's probably not going to happen. There's only a few days left, even if we went for the Muslim calendar, and there's 8 months left, it's probably not going to happen. Whereas la'alla, I could do it in 5 years. That's more likely. Okay, all of these are harfs. Harf. If we want to talk about it as an ism or a fi'l. Whereas inna or kana wa akhawatuha, they're fi'ls. They're verbs. Inna wa akhawatuha are ahraf. They're harfs. They're particles. Okay? Now, here we are. The lesson. Inshallah ta'ala. Inna wa akhawatuha. Inna and its sisters. Ukht is sister. Akhawat is plural. Akhawat. Alright? Ukht wa akhawat. Pen is too fat. Okay, let's see how it goes now. Okay, here's the examples that they're giving us in the An-Nahw al-Wadih. Al-Jamalu saburun. Al-Jamal is a camel. Sabur is patient or extremely patient. So we have sabir, someone who's patient. Sabur would be an exaggerated form of patience. Sabur. Sabur. Al-Jamalu saburun. You see both of them. You see number one, that this is a noun. So it's a jumlatul ismiya. So this is called the mubtada. And the information about it is called al-khabar. And both of them are marfu'. However, when we add inna al-jamala saburun. Inna caused the mubtada to be mansoob, while the khabar stayed marfu', and then this becomes ismu inna, and this is khabaru inna. Verily, the camel is patient. Right? I'll read the next one, and then the next one I'll leave to you, Abdullah, to read. Al-haramu qadimun. Al-haram is the pyramid. The pyramid. Like you guys got there in Memphis. Right? Al-haram. Al-haram qadim. Qadim is old. Right? Al-haram qadim. Ancient. Old. The pyramid is old. The pyramid is ancient. We have a noun. It's a jumlatul ismiya. Therefore, this is called the mubtada, and this is called the khabar. Right? Both of them marfu'. When we add inna in front of that, the mubtada becomes mansoob, and the khabar stays marfu'. In al-harama qadimun. Any questions so far, Abdullah? And sister, if you have them, just type them, inshallah. But you said you covered it. Even if you see something I'm saying wrong and I could explain better, type it too. I'll include that, inshallah. I'm not a Arabic professor or anything. I'm just a brother trying to help out. Okay, we have here. Read number 3 for us, Abdullah.
Al-imtihanu. Qaribun.
Qaribun. نعم. والزهرة ناضرة. شيخنا ياسين. الامتحان قريب. الامتحان is the test. امتحان. Right? Like in Surah Ali Imran, where Allah says, إن كنتم تحبون الله فاتبعوني. If you love Allah, then follow me. This is the Salaf used to call this Ayatul Imtihan or Ayatul Ibtila. They used to say, everyone used to claim to love Allah and His Messenger, and then Allah sent down for us this ayat as a test. If you really love Allah, then follow the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Can't love Allah for real, can't be a real love, a true love, and you don't follow His Messenger. He gave you a condition for it to be a true love. So imtihan is a test. We also have ikhtibar. That's used a lot, right? I'm sure this one probably what mostly Yasin knows. For some reason his mic isn't coming on. Ikhtibar, because this is the time for tests right now, right? As teachers, ikhtibar, imtihan, qareeb is close, right? The imtihan is close. The test is close. You see, al-imtihan is a noun, so therefore it's a mubtada. This is jumla ismiya. Right? Qareebun. This is khabar. Both of them marfu'. Az-zahratu nadira. The flower is bright. Okay, the flower marfu'. Man, this is a mubtada and a khabar. This is a jumla ismiya. Okay, we got that down. Now, alimtu. I learned. I know. I came to know. علمت أن الامتحان قريب. علمت, I knew, but I came to know basically. علمت أن الامتحان, right? قريب. I came to know, or I knew, that the imtihan was qareeb. Anna, but it's with some emphasis here. Alimtu anna al-imtihan. I learned that the imtihan is qareeb, or I knew that the imtihan, that the test was close. Anna, it means that, but it has an element of emphasis to it, like inna. ويسرني أن الزهرة ناضرة. يسرني from sarra, not sara, but sarra, meaning to make happy. So يسرني, it makes me happy. أن الزهرة ناضرة, that the flower is bright. We see that after anna, the mubtada became mansoob, while the khabar remained marfu'. And is now called ismu anna, wa khabru anna, wa ismu anna, wa khabru anna, but that's something different. That's not the most important thing. I don't know why your mic's not coming on, Yasin, but as long as you can follow, if you want to text or whatever, however you want to join in, no problem. You want to go right back out and try to come back in and get your mic on, it's up to you. I'll try one more time here. Let's see. Okay. The next example, read Abdullah number 5.
الكتاب الكتب الكتاب
Al-Kitabu.
الكتاب أستاذ أستاذ
Now, the book Ustad. Al-Kitab is the book. Ustad is a professor or a teacher. So we're saying Al-Kitabu Ustadun. Basically, the book is a teacher. The book is a teacher. We could say maybe this isn't someone who learned properly, because, you know, there's no reading from books and thinking that you know stuff. You have to sit with the real ulama. You have to sit with the scholars and teachers to learn. It's not just sitting with a book. But that doesn't mean that the statement doesn't have some truth to it. The book is a teacher. And al-qamaru misbahun. The moon is a lamp. Misbah. Right? This is in Ayat An-Nur. Right? We find this in Ayat An-Nur, where Allah talks about the Quran and Iman and all of that. Misbah. Mishkatul Masabih. Right? Misbah. Lamp. Al-Qamaru Misbahun. The moon is a lamp. As we see, these are all nouns. Right? This is Jumlatul Ismiya. The mubtada and the khabar are all marfu'. Now we come over here and we put ka'anna. As we said, ka'anna, it benefits us that the mubtada is similar to the khabar, or that the khabar is similar to the mubtada, that there's similarity between them. As we said the similarity between the mubtada and the khabar. So كأن الكتاب أستاذ كأن القمر مصباح. So كأن means it is as if. It is as if, basically. Or it's like that. So كأن, it's like the book is a professor. It's like, or it is as if the moon is a lamp. Right? And we see that after adding كأن from the akhawatul inna, that the mubtada became mansoob. And they're called ismu ka'anna, while the khabar remained marfu' and is called khabaru ka'anna. Any questions, Abdullah? Yasin, I don't know why your mic's not coming on, but you could just type it up. You're used to that, man. You don't have a computer for how long? You got any questions, Abdullah? Okay, read number 7 for us.
Al-Fatun Qadimun.
No. Al-Athath is furniture. And Qadim means what? Old. Or ancient, yes.
A little clarification on that now, because if you say somebody is old, you just say Qadim.
If you were talking about a person, you would say Kabir. You would be respectful and say Kabir, right? Or even maybe an animal, you might say Kabir, right? Qadim means old. But depending on, is a pyramid really old or is it ancient? It's ancient, you know. So it depends on how you. There's a word called atiq, which might be better or more appropriate for ancient. Atiq, right? But qadim, depending on, if you put it in front of al-haram, meaning the pyramid, then you might say ancient. Whereas when you put it in front of athath, you might say antique. You know what I mean? But here you mean old. Al-athathu qadimun. Wal-khasairu qalila. Al-khasair is the plural of khusra, meaning losses, loss. So khasair is losses. And qalil means few or little. Right? Qalil means little. But we have qalila because khasair is a non-intellectual plural. So we talk about it in the feminine, right? Al-khasairu qalilatun. The losses are little, or the losses are few. But when we put lakinna here, we're going to see al-baytu jadidun. Al-baytu jadidun. The house is new. Not the new house, because if jadid was going to be an adjective, we'd have to have al-baytul jadidu with the alif lam, but we don't have that. So we have the house is new. Lakinna al-athatha qadimun. After lakinna, al-athath became mansoob and became ismu lakinna, wal qadim, the khabar stayed marfu and became khabaru lakinna. Wal khasairu qalila, the losses are few. Shabbat an-nar, lakin al-khasaira qalilun. The fire, shabbat, meaning it raged. Right? It burned strong. Shabbat an-nar, lakin al-khasaira qalila. But the losses are few. So we said here that lakinna is istidrak, meaning an exception or a clarification. Istidrak might be better as a clarification, preventing the listener from understanding something wrong, or not preventing the listener from understanding something not intended. So, for instance, if I said al-baytul jadid, you might think everything in the house therefore is new. You got a new house, you got new everything, right? Lakin al-athatha qadimun. But the furniture is old. So he's clarifying you not to think that just because you got a new house, you got brand new everything else as well. And then when we said shabbat an-nar, and again this kasra here is only for reading purposes because verbs never have a majroor state. They never allow majroor. But we have a sukoon here for shabbat because nar is feminine. And we have the noon, the first noon here is sukoon on it because there's two noons. One is a sakin and one is maftuh with a fathah. So because we have the two sukoons, we put the kasra there for reading purposes. Shabbat an-nar. So we think, man, the fire raged, man, everything must be destroyed, right? Lakin al-khasaira qalila. So we can have the marfu in there. But the losses are few. So khasaira became mansoob. And it's called ismu lakinna. Wa qalila remained marfu and it's called khabaru lakinna. Read number 9 for us, Abdullah.
Alfa, this is kahatun nasi.
Al-fakiha. Fakiha.
Al-fakihatun.
No.
Nadijatun. Najidatun. Najidatun. Nadijatun.
نعم ناضجة ناضجة نعم الفاكهة ناضجة. الفاكهة is fruit, the fruit, right? ناضجة is ripe. Right? ناضجة is ripe. The fruit is ripe. وَالْقَمَرُ طَالِعٌ. The moon is rising. طالع, rising. The moon is rising. We see both are مبتدا خبر جملة الاسمية مبتدا خبر مرفوع 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 مرفوع, right? Then later, right? Later, here they're using it in a way not so much how we said here, but you'll see it that the husul is ba'id. It's not so much like that, but it has tamanna, it has hope, and we'll see why they use it right there instead of la'alla. But here, layta al-fakihata nadija. Layta is a word of hope. If only the fruit were ripe, right? Or like if only the fruit were ripe. It's a hope, and it's not going to happen right now. So to say la'alla al-fakiyah is different. Maybe they're ripe. We'll see. And but later here, it's not gonna happen too quickly. That they're just gonna become ripe like in the next 5 minutes or something. If only the fruit were ripe. If it's gonna happen in the next 5 minutes, we just be quiet and wait 5 minutes and then eat it. But it's not. We have to wait a day or two. We have to wait, a week or whatever it is. So later al-fakihata ناضجة وليت القمر طالعة طالع ليت القمر طالع. If only the moon were rising. So this has an element of hope, and this is a word that you have to just get more usage in it. We see lakinna and ka'anna and anna and inna. We see those more often. But later, inshallah, we'll get more practice with it. But later, if only, it's a hope. But a hope which is something which is far. But anyway, we see the purpose here is that the mubtada becomes becomes mansoob with a fatha, and it's called ismu later. Al-fakiha ismu later, mansoob. Al-qamara ismu later, mansoob. Nadija, the khabar, stays marfu' and it's just called khabaru later. And then we have our last example here. Read number 11 for us, Abdullah.
Okay. Al-Kitabu
Rakhisun. Al-Kitabu Rakhis. The book is cheap. Cheap. That's not true anymore. Books are not cheap anymore. They used to be cheap. Now they're expensive. Al-Maridu Na'imun. The sick person, the patient, Na'imun, is sleeping. The sick person or the patient, Na'imun, is sleeping. All of these are, we see this is a noun, therefore it's a jumla ismiya, it's beginning with a noun, so this is the mubtada, then we have a khabar. All of them being marfu'. Then we add la'alla, and we said la'alla is hope of something happening, and that it's closer in its happening. Right? It's more likely and closer to be happening. لَعَلَّ الْكِتَابَ رَخِيصٌ. لَعَلَّ الْكِتَابَ رَخِيصٌ. لَعَلَّ is from the akhawatu inna. It makes the mubtada mansoob, and it's called ismu la'alla. And the khabar stays marfu, but it's called khabaru la'alla. So perhaps, or it's hoped that the book is cheap. Perhaps, or it's, I hope the book is cheap, right? Perhaps the book is cheap. I hope the book is cheap, like this, right? Same meaning, even though it's not I hope, because it's not a verb like that. This is a harf. I hope, she hopes, you hope. That's not going to happen here. La'alla is just, it is hopeful, right? So we'd say perhaps would be a better translation. The book is cheap. لعل المريض نائم. We see لعل from the أخوات إن, sisters of إن, entered on the mubtada and made it mansoob with a fatha, مريض, and the khabar stayed marfu, but the mubtada is now called ismu لعل, and the khabar is called khabaru لعل. Hopefully, perhaps, hopefully, the patient is sleeping. Hopefully, the book is cheap. Hopefully, the patient is sleeping. Perhaps, it is hoped that the book is cheap. Perhaps the book is cheap. Perhaps the patient is sleeping. It's hoped the patient is sleeping. Hopefully, the patient is sleeping. Hopefully, all the same thing. Hopefully, perhaps, it's hopeful. Perhaps and hopefully would probably be the best two translations. And we said this is these six. Inna wa akhawatuha, 5. When they enter on the mubtada and the khabar, then they make the mubtada mansoob, but the khabar remains marfu, but it's changed. The ismu inna, or its sister, or khabaru inna, or its sister, and that they're all harfs, right? They're all harfs. They're all particles. They're not verbs or nouns. And the opposite of inna and how it works. Are there any questions? Abdullah, Zubair. I mean, Yasin. His mic still ain't coming on for some reason, but hopefully he's understanding. And the sister, if she has any suggestions or corrections, then she can do that. There's a WhatsApp group for this at 314-828-8060. You send a message on WhatsApp to that number, you can get updates on classes and all that. This class, as we said, is only once a week at this day, whether it's Tuesday morning for you or Monday night for you. This is where we're at. I guess it could be Tuesday afternoon in Australia or something, but normally we go over the Mutun Talib al-Ilm, and that's what we've been, but on this day we go over some principle of grammar so that we can, when we're reading the Mutun Talib al-Ilm, have a better understanding. You got this down, Abdullah?
Pretty much.
Is it clearer than last week? All right. So this is important for this page right here is important for you. Maybe take a picture of it with your phone or something. This is important. And I'll send you the notes as well, so you can the translation of this chapter, the lessons, these examples. I'll send you that translation, and then you can see it. Now, next week we have in this section, An-Nahw al-Wadih has 3 books. It has 3 sections. we have only 2 more sections left in this book after today. We have al-jar, right? Al-jar, which is the prepositions that come before a noun, which make a majroor, which is min, wa ila, wa an, wa ala, wa fi, wa rubba, wa ba, wa kaf, wa lam. Right? Whenever these appear before a noun, they make it majroor. And then we have, after that, An-Nahw wa man'ut, which is adjectives. I think we'll probably cover them in one day. Once we do that, I'm thinking about going over some sarf instead of continuing in the book, because the book starts to get heavy into some issues with verbs. But if we don't have verbs down pat first, then getting heavy into the verbs is going to be difficult for us. So I'm thinking about stopping An-Nahw al-Wadih in order to go over some sarf, which is how we get from, for instance, dhahaba to dhahabtu, wa yadhabu, wa adhabu, as well as dhihab, wa madhab, and all of that. To go over and how we get to the different words, the ishtiqaq, the how we get to all these other things here, right? So I'm thinking about, after we finish al-jar wal majroor, which will be next week, to go over some sarf. And I'll consult you guys at that time, inshallah, to see how it is. But inshallah, hopefully, you guys benefited from something today. If you don't have any questions, then I'll just shut up. Cool. Some of Yasin's typing something.
Might be going off thing now. Go back to the page with the lesson on it. Okay, now I'm looking at, cause all those words that, at the end of that sentence, it's got min, mubtada.
Where?
At the end of the sentence, the first sentence. Kullu mithal.
Here? كل مثال في القسم الأول يتألف من المبتدأ والخبر. Says every example from the first section, meaning this row here, all the way up.
Okay, I know.
You're right? The first row, before we added in wa akhawat, then they are yata'allafu, meaning they're created from, they're written from, they're authored from. Because yata'allaf, we have the word mu'allaf, which is a author, right? Mu'allaf, right? Min mubtada wa khabar. They're made up, or they're written or authored from a mubtada and a khabar. وهما مرفوعان كما علمت, and they're marfu'. Both of them are marfu', like you learned. Give me 1 second. Let me add a few minutes before it hangs up on us. Okay. وإذا نظرت إلى القسم الثاني, and if you looked at the second row, which is after we added in, right, everything, the second example, the second row, رأيت الأمثلة نفسها, you see the same examples. بعد أن دخل على كل منها أحد الأحرف, after one of the particles, the ahruf, had been entered onto it, or entered into it. Inna, anna, ka'anna, lakinna, layta, la'alla. After one of these had been entered into the same example. وإذا تأملت أواخر الأسماء في هذا القسم, and if you looked at the last word, or the last noun in this section, وجدت الاسم الأول منصوبا في كل أمثلة, then you would find the first noun mansub in every example. والاسم الثاني مرفوعا في جميعها, and the second word, or the second noun, marfu' in all of them. وَالَّذِي أَحْدَثَ هَذَا التَّغْيِيرَ, and what caused this change, هو دخول الأحرف المتقدمة, it is the entrance of the huruf, the ahruf, the particles that we talked about preceding, the preceding particles. فهذه الأحرف إذا تدخل على المبتدا والخبر, so if these ahruf, if these particles enter upon a mubtada and a khabar, فتنسب الأول ويسمى اسمها, then it makes the first one mansub and it's called ismu, and it's called its ism. So ismu inna, ismu anna, ismu ka'anna, like that. وَالطَّرْفُ الثَّانِي وَيُسَمَّى خَبْرَهَا, and it's in the second noun is marfu', it's marfu' and it's called khabruha, khabru inna, khabru anna, khabru ka'anna, khabru lakinna, like that. وإذا تدبرت معاني هذه الأحرف الستة, and if you were to contemplate the meanings of these 6 particles, في أمثالتها, in their examples, وجدت إن وأن, you found that inna and anna tufidan, that they benefit توكيد ثبوت الخبر للمبتدا, that they benefited the affirmation of the, this is hard to translate some of this stuff, the affirmation of the thubut, of the there's something that's thabit, it's strong, or like this, the thubut al khabar lil mubtada, it confirmed it. That's all I can think of right now. It confirmed the connection or the establishment of the khabar belonging to the mubtada. So it affirmed the establishment of the khabar belonging to the mubtada. وَكَأَنَّ يُفِيد تَشْبِيهَ الْمُبْتَدَى بِالْخَبَرِ, and كَأَنَّ benefits the likening of the mubtada to the khabar. وَلَكِنَّ يَأْتِي لِلْإِسْتِدْرَاكِ, it comes as a, what is the word I used? Istidrak. وَهُوَ مَنْعُ سَامِعٍ, not an exception. I used another word that was better. It's not an exception. For instance, if I say something and I come back and I fix it, I can't think of the word right now. I said it earlier. Istidrak, meaning, for instance, if you make mistakes in a class and you come back next week and fix them, this is called istidrak. Al-Hakim, he has a book called Al-Mustadrak, which is what he thinks he's fixing from Sahih Bukhari and Muslim. Hadith, which they put in their books, which don't belong, and hadith, which should have been in their books, but he didn't put them in there. That's called Al-Mustadrak. Istidrak. Right? Okay, so istidrak, I can't remember the word I used earlier, subhanAllah. So it comes as an istidrak. وَهُوَ مَنْعُ سَامِعٍ, it prevents the listener مِنْ فَهَمْ شَيْءٍ غَيْرُ مَقْصُودٍ, from understanding something which is not under or not intended. Right? Clarification. Istidrak. Clarification. That's the word I used. It's a clarification, right? لَكِنَّ comes as a clarification. وَلَيْتَ تَدُلُّ عَلَى تَمَنِّي حُصُولِ الْخَبَرِ, and later shows or points to the hope or the wish of achieving the khabar. وَلَعَلَّ تَدُلُّ عَلَى رَجَاءِ وُقُوعِهِ, and لَعَلَّ shows or points to the hope of achieving it. وَالتَّمَنِّي يَكُونُ عَادَةً لِلْأَمْرِ بَعِيدَ الْحُصُولِ, and tamanni comes normally with a matter which is far away from being achieved, something that's not easily achieved, something far away. أما الرجاء فيكون عادة في الأمور القريبة الوقوع. As for hope, raja, then it comes from, then it is normally in matters which are easy and closer to being achieved. You got that? إن وأن وكأن ولكن وليت ولعل تدخل على المبتدا والخبر. All of these 6 enter on the mubtada and the khabar. فتنسب المبتدا, so it makes the mubtada mansub. وتسمى اسمها, and it called اسمها, and it's called its ism. وترفع الخبر, and it makes the khabar marfu. ويسمى خبرها, and it's called its khabar. Is that good enough, or you had something else?
I was just trying to ask a little simple question about the men. You started reading all that. I was trying to find out about men. You know, I know, yeah, it changes
Here?
What comes after it, right?
Min? No. Yeah, min. It changes what comes after. It make mubtada'i wa khabari, or mubtada'in wa khabarin. Okay.
I said mubtada.
Well, that's next week, man. That's jar. That's next week, dude.
I'm ahead of myself, but you started already, man. I told you, I'm probably getting a little ahead of myself here, but right there at the end, where it said, man, you said when I told you at the beginning of the sentence, you started reading, so you just started blew the rules. So I said, okay.
Yeah, min mubtada'in wa khabarin, from a mubtada and a khabar.
Yeah, I didn't see, I couldn't tell what that was. That's why I said mubtada. I didn't say mubtada in.
Right.
That's what I was saying, because I like, okay, mubtada.
Right, no problem.
I'm like, okay, well, don't that supposed to make it mubtada, I guess, in, and then
In.
Well,
No.
Covering.
Same thing here. Al mubtada'i wal khabari, down here. Al mubtada'i wal khabari. Except with just mubtada'i instead of mubtada'in because of the alif lam, right? Or khabari, same thing. Inshallah, we'll get there next week. But you already know that anyway, man. You just maybe got, after seeing mubtada with the alif there, that's what maybe confused you. Other than that, you already know it. All right, ya akhwan wa akhawat, inshallah ta'ala, we will see you tomorrow with Mutun Talib al-Ilm. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.